Okay, I said I'd talk about mental health and steroid use, and this is always a subject that causes a lot of controversy, and also gets people very defensive when you start questioning as to whether they may have not the best relationship with their drug use. And what you guys need to start to remember is I'm not saying that having a far from perfect relationship with your steroid use is a massively bad thing. And this is not judgmental in any way. This is just a case of that's what it is. You know, I haven't got a particularly good relationship with the way I view the way I look. I've not particularly had the best relationship with drugs. That's quite obvious. Uh, it's not been terrible, but there has been times when it has been bad. And there's been times where my focus was on drug use and not on training and not on diet. But that's never been the entire driving factor. But there are moments in my usage where it's got like that. It was definitely like that towards the back of the second film. I surprised myself in that I stopped using actually quite easily. But then I didn't have a reason to use anymore. But I went through that. Will I lose all my size and I don't want to be small because I'm not using, etc., etc., etc. And eventually gave myself a bit of a mental slap and told me to stop being a dick and just get on with it. Now, people are very conscious of mental health at the moment. It's very much a buzz topic, both within the user community and in general in the UK. I'm not sure what it's like in America, Australia, or other places, but in the UK, it's definitely the topic du jour. And it's almost fashionable to have mental health problems. And it's not, how do I put this? I find users get very, very defensive when you suggest that their relationship with their usage may not be as good as it could be. Someone not so long ago posted, basically it was a pic on Facebook with, do you obsess about your look? Do you obsess about your weight? Can you walk past a reflective surface without looking at yourself? Do you weigh daily? If so, you might have body dysmorphia, etc., etc., etc. Now, I've preached long and hard enough that body dysmorphia is a very, very severe medical condition. But that doesn't mean that you don't have body issues. Some of them are natural. Some of them are the same as everybody. We're all got things about our bodies that we'd like to change. Right from too short, too tall, too fat, too thin, big ears, big nose, small nose, whatever it may be. That's normal. That's normal in a human being. And then but when we start seeing those thoughts start to occupy more of our time, or start to change our relationship with things, with people, with how we eat, with what we do. And a lot of people, when you start talking about stuff, goes, well, plenty of people smoke, plenty of people drink. And what fucking relevance does that have? Yes, they do. Yes, plenty of people have bad relationships with tobacco, have bad relationships with fucking McDonald's, and have bad relationships with alcohol or recreational drugs. So, what the fuck has that got to do with you as an individual assessing whether you have a bad relationship with steroids or bad relationship with your image? Absolutely fuck all. So why do people bring it up? People get incredibly defensive. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. As long as you're aware of it and you monitor it so that it doesn't get out of control, because it can very easily get out of control. That's not mental health issues, that's just dedication. Well, dedication is technically a mental health issue. If you looked at any top-end athlete and what they go through and what they sacrifice to be the best at their sport, they would be regarded as having a mental health issue or an unbalanced approach to life. That's what makes them successful at what they do. And this is where the whole negative thing gets mixed up with things. It doesn't necessarily have to be a negative thing, but you do have to be aware of it, because it can very easily run away with yourself. Now, there's loads of study out there showing that when people get involved in the fitness world, their issues, their body image issues, and their episodes of unhappiness or depression or whatever it may be, do increase. And one of the reasons for this is we suddenly get massive exposure to Body Beautiful, and it takes a very, very strong willpower for that not to actually affect you and for you to become more judgmental of yourself. It's a hypercritical world, and online can be very, very ruthless. And it's a difficult balance between trying to be truthful with somebody about how they look and not being a twat. And quite often when you try and be truthful, you just come across as a twat anyway. But people struggle to differentiate between truth and opinion, or they take truth as negative. If I say that individual A is fat, then we can't say that's fat shaming, that's negative. No, that's a descriptive term for how they look. It might not be the most polite term, but it's definitely not necessarily an insult. It's how that description is delivered, and it's how that prescription is perceived by the recipient. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. It's just a description. I'm fat. That I don't take as an insult. That's a true reflection of how I appear because of my increase in high levels of body fat. But we're in a world where you can't say that, and that's bullshit. But half of that's the problem on the person. Now, if you can't accept somebody being honest with you, then you probably don't have the best grasp of who or what you are. And the key in all this is honesty without judgment. And that's not the easiest thing to achieve. I'm fat. Yes, I've dieted a bit. Could I diet more? Yeah, good. Why don't I? Because being skinny, I don't desire enough to put up with not doing what I want to do. Now, at the moment, I've decided rather than try and reduce food further, I'd increase training intensity and train harder. And I'm a lot comfortable like this and a lot happier like this than cutting food lower and lower down. So I basically have upped my output. I hate cardio, but I have a lot of grass areas at home, a lot of lawns. So I've bought a push mower as opposed to a petrol driven one. Not ride on, but one of those with a geared motor at the back. So therefore I get twice a week, 2 hours of cardio in the garden. It's not massive, but it's more than I was doing. And that's where I've chosen to combat what I'm doing. But at the end of the day, first thing is to be honest. And then you need to look at what you desire to change. Then you need to look at what it would take to make that change. And then you need to decide whether you're willing to pay the price. If you're not, then you must just accept who and where and what you are. Very much like looking at a nice top in a shop. Oh, that's gorgeous, brilliant. Fuck me, it's 120 quid. It's nice, but ain't that fucking nice? Oh, I want a six-pack. Oh, I'd look brilliant with a six-pack. Fuck, I'm going to have to diet like that. I'm going to have to do that. I didn't want a six-pack that much. You get where I'm going. But then accept it. Don't make yourself miserable because you can't achieve that goal. And you see so many people in our world, in our environment, in the fitness environment, and they never seem to be happy. They're constantly beating themselves up about a lack of size or a lack of condition or a lack of achievement in competition. And it's like, well, really, Do you enjoy doing this? Or are you doing it because you're struggling to get acceptance and you need gratification and you need acceptance from everyone around you to feel good about yourself? Well, that's not really a healthy place to be when it comes to your own mental health. And the result we have is that this environment is a breeding ground for mental health issues. The amount of female, and you know, when you look at a comp diet or a show diet, if you step out of our community and you look at it from a normal, balanced individual's perception, that's a fucking eating disorder. Not the fact that you're restricting your food to achieve a certain goal, but the fact that that cheat meals seem to be fashionable to be very excessive, and that cheat meals become binges. That's an eating disorder, and that's the start of a poor relationship with food. And I have seen loads and loads of people that prep for shows, particularly more prevalent with women, who now have an unhealthy relationship with food and struggle with food. And you see them, they'll have been very, very tight and strict with the diet for ages. And they will abstain from all sorts of activities, even if they're not going for a comp, even if they've got no real reason to, because it doesn't fit the macros. And you don't, it's difficult to find the balance. Oh, but that's dedication. Fine. If that achievement's making you happy, but most of these people, when you get speaking to them, they're not. And they live on a craving for likes, and they live on a craving for acceptance from the community and positive comments about a post, because they're actually quite miserable within themselves about their appearance, and they have a very bad image relationship. And so this is why they require this constant reassurance. And I'm not talking about the thirsty whores and the Instagram hoes. They're just a waste of fucking space, really. They're very sad individuals who have a very, very big issue with confidence and low self-esteem. I'm just talking about general. And blokes do it just as much. And I've been there myself. I've been through stages where I've posted pics and then I've like, no, forget, and it's fucking ridiculous when you get to that stage. And you really need to give your head a shake and sort yourself out. Because as human beings, we are so much more than that. It's quite funny that people will talk about balance when they've failed in competition, and that's just a lot of bollocks. But what you tend to find is people that have been through a certain level of development and gone past it, when they look back, they see that, and hindsight's a wonderful thing, that what they strove, that they thought was going to give them happiness, they actually realised that it wasn't. I thought that getting over 400 pounds was going to be this momentous achievement. Now, granted, the 400 pound I reached was not a good 400 pounds, but 360, 370, 380, the balance I felt was reasonable. But it never brought me the happiness and fulfillment and completion that I expected it to do so. In fact, it left me quite disappointed. And that fulfillment that I thought I was looking for in there, I actually found in just my family and my life and my partner. I still train. Okay, I don't use now. I'm not obsessive with my training, but I still like to push, and but I get enjoyment out of that. And this is where there's a difference. I'm not obsessed about moving a certain weight anymore. I'm not obsessed about being a certain size anymore. But I do enjoy pushing my limits within the gym still. And this is where I feel I've got a lot healthier balance with things. I wouldn't say I'm particularly healthy when it comes to my physical makeup. I need to be fitter and I need to be leaner. And I'm still working through addressing those issues and those sides of my life. But, our community gets very, very defensive and actually celebrates destructive behaviour. And one of the issues with that is the amount of people that post online that just aren't honest. I've seen guys post up criticising usage of others, and I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, did any of these people realise what your rebound cycle was? or what you did to achieve this, that, or the other. People lie continue, and I'm not expecting people to sit online and go, "Oh God, this is shit, that shit." But you know what? If you diet on extreme drugs, then say so. If you do huge rebounds post cycle, then say so. Don't try and make out that you're some genetic freak and you can eat everything under the fucking sun and you still stay lean. And admit the fact that you're running fucking shitloads of growth and 3.5 gram of gear and everything else that's going with it. Because it creates a false illusion for others, and then people question why they can't achieve that, and then they feel that they're a failure because that they're not be able to match that individual who's nobody special, by the way. They're just an average online person. And then they either get very disheartened and drop out of the world completely, or they start beating themselves up and getting into this self-defecation type situation, or they turn to drugs, or more extreme drugs, in frustration to try and get that acceptance from the community. And like I said, it's a difficult balance to play from being reflective and honest with somebody about the way they look, but not letting that become overly negative for that individual. And then we put drugs into the situation, and I'm seeing more and more people struggle. Now, if you sit there now and you say to yourself, tomorrow I'm stopping using steroids, and you're genuinely consider not using ever again, and then write down what your gut reactions are, what your concerns are, what your fears are, and then look at that objectively. Because you'll probably be surprised to find that a lot of your fears are, oh, I don't want to lose size, oh, I'm going to get smaller, and I'm going to... And does that actually change you as a person? Does that make you any less of a person? Now, if you enjoy the competing side of it and everything else, and you enjoy winning, or who doesn't enjoy winning, then obviously, the drugs are part of a necessity of that process if you're in a federation that allows drug use. But if you have any fear or anxiety about stopping using, then chances are you don't have the most healthy relationship with drugs. Doesn't mean you're a junkie, doesn't mean you're a drug addict, but it does mean that you could start having issues with dependency. And it seems to be that the longer you're in usage and the longer you use for, the more conscious you are of your image, the more aware you are of your image, the more dissatisfied you are of your image in general, and the more driven you are to continue to use. And any substance in your life that you cannot walk away from that is not a necessity, then I would question your relationship with that, and I would make sure you were very aware of how that impacted your life. Now, a lot will say, well, it doesn't cause many problems, it doesn't do this, it doesn't do that. Really? Because I speak to a lot of people, and you start digging into it, there are issues, there are anxiety issues, there are issues within relationships because of their usage or whatever it may be. And I'm not by any means trying to tell people they shouldn't use or stop using. What I am saying to people is that, if you find yourself in this, then you need to start looking at ways of improving your relationship with what you're doing. And we get so wrapped up. Guys just don't train when they're not on gear, or don't train very hard when they're not on gear, or they're not on diet when they're not on gear. And when they'll report they're having this side effect and that side effect and the other side effect, and you suggest that they reduce the dose or come off, and then you'll have a fucking heart attack. That's not the best way to be. And it's definitely a behaviour that you need to start being honest with yourself. And it might mean you involve a friend or a partner and ask some deep searching questions. And it is a difficult balance. And I do start to question as to how possible it is to run gear long term in any way, shape, or form and not build up a crux with it where you feel you have to have it. We tend to be, the bigger or more successful we get as bodybuilders, the more we tend to identify that as being us. And I think the more, when that goes, sometimes it's difficult to replace that with being somebody else. I've sort of gone off track a bit here, I think, but you know, taking an oily substance in a vial that we don't really know what it is, we don't know where it's been made, and you can bullshit as much as you want about this lab or that lab or the other lab. The truth is, you don't know what's in it. There is no quality standard. There is no health and safety. There is no checking, verification, or anything with UGLs. They're made wherever they're made, by whoever they're made by, and you have no idea of any of the information about where, when, how, what, or anything about it. Now, if I said to you, here's an unknown chemical, stick it in your ass, it's going to make you massive, most rationally thinking people would question that behaviour. But when we put a label of steroids on it, we don't question that behaviour. And then we claim to be normal, and we claim to be healthy, and we claim to be balanced and everything else, which is utter bullshit, because we're not. We are definitely not normal. And I don't find that a negative or a positive, it's just a fact. Some people celebrate not being normal, some people think it's a great positive, some people think it's a great negative. I suppose very much it depends on your perception. But I do think we need to be careful, and I don't want to use that fucking balance word all the time because it's shit. But, you know, I do think it's careful to keep perspective on where we are and what we're doing. And it's very easy to make excuses. Just one more, and then before we know it, we're 3-4 years down the line, and it's still just one more. Now, if you're happy and you're truly, genuinely happy in what you do, then cock on, crack on, and enjoy yourselves. But if you're not, then do something about it. Make a change, whatever it may be. It might be that extreme size will give you happiness. I doubt it. I think when you get there, you'll find that the maintenance of that extreme size actually is quite negative. But, you know, certain parts of my journey definitely gave me extreme happiness, and there were certain parts of my journey when training was going really well and I felt really good, and it was great. But there was definitely parts where it was too much, too far, and I felt crap. Not just from the drugs either, just from the physical size or the commitment it took to maintain it. So, you know, if you don't enjoy something, if you're not enjoying something, then question whether that enjoyment is worth, the lack of enjoyment is worth the enjoyment that you perceive at the end of that goal. So, for example, prepping for a show, I've never enjoyed the standing on stage thing. I've never enjoyed the standing there in your underpants covered in Marmite bit. That was never a reward for me. So therefore my motivation to compete was always very, very low. Always enjoyed the gym, always enjoyed pushing myself in there. So my motivation to train hard was always very, very high. And if you're prepping for shows, and let's be fair with this, it's not just us that suffers for show, our family suffers, our kids suffers, our loved ones all suffer when we compete for a show. If you're not getting a reward out of that justifies that all-round family unit suffering, then why are you doing it? And if you can ask yourself those questions and you can answer them honestly, then I think you'll go a lot further way of being a more complete and happy individual. Because what I see generally within our community is a lot of sad, unhappy people. And it seems to be getting worse. When you actually get talking to people, a lot of them are trapped because they just don't know what to do or where to go from where they are. Reach out, speak to somebody. It's always, I feel, worth just stopping, taking 10 minutes and questioning your choices, whatever it is you do. And if at the end of those questions you come back to that same point, yes, this is worth it for me, then crack on. But if you don't, then change something. Right, fucking hell, 25 minutes. Bit of a long one. I'll get off now, and I'll speak to you guys later. Take care and be happy.